I'm so glad I get to have the dad joke. It's been my dream since episode 1.
Here we go. So, welcome to episode 19 of the Canadian Prepper Podcast, recorded April 4th, 2019. Greetings from the alternate location. My name is Ian, and I'm host of the show for tonight. No, there's not been an overthrow attempt on the Alpha Prepper. Eric is busy researching our next episode while taking out the trash. As for me, while not on the road, I live on a small hobby farm. I'm an outdoor enthusiast, sport shooter, reloader, and my farm's designated handyman.
I'm Alan. My friends and family call me a safety nerd. My background as a first responder has developed a mind for safety. I teach first aid, coach my family and friends to be better prepared. I'm a locksmith by trade, and I have worked in the physical security industry for more than 20 years now.
And I'm Ange, or Angela, and I'm the weather expert apparently in this episode, and the least interesting. And my hobbies are film and television is where I have my degree, and archery sometimes.
Archer's pretty cool.
Yeah. So I was actually asking you off the line or off the show beforehand, but what kind of archery are you into? Is it more just like target shooting, or what type of bows?
There's not much to do with it unless the apocalypse happens, but it was just
Well, 3D targets are pretty fun to shoot at anyway, right?
Yeah, and safer.
That's right.
All right. Well, we have some some content tonight that will blow you away. Tonight, we're going to start off with some news articles relating to preparedness in the outdoors. We'll let you know what we've done lately for preparedness and getting ourselves better improved. And then we will get into our main topic, which is severe weather events. So let's start off with some news. I didn't put a link up yet because, frankly, I rushed through it. But if you've been following the news at all, Nebraska has been pretty badly hit by flooding. There's been billions of dollars in crop and livestock damage, which is not good. Most of central Ontario here in Canada is bracing for high winds, although not as high as what Newfoundland is going to see. Another article I put up here was from CNBC, and across in England, there's that particular article links to a woman in London, in merry old England, and they're preparing for Brexit after years of controversy and votes. It's actually happening in the next couple of weeks, and they're preparing for the worst, that their supply chain is going to be cut off because of their lack of treaties and tariffs all of a sudden.
So is that a thing where basically once the date happens, they're out of the EU, they don't have any trade deal worked out, or what's the deal with the sunset date?
Well, any deal any trade agreement that was in place with the EU would no longer be valid. So if that trade deal did not include the UK specifically, then they would have to sign new agreements. And the concern based on what I read about the Brexit conspiracy theories is that because of that, they're going to run into shortages of all kinds of supplies, because England is a very small island and does not have a lot of its own resources, so it imports just about everything, which leads to their high cost of living in general. But after all the years of having, group purchasing power, all of a sudden that's going away, and that could that's the worry is that it's going to be a big deal. Of course, only time will tell, but that's why we prep, is to deal with the unknown.
Cool. Yeah, so I put in a couple weather-related articles anyway. Parts of Newfoundland are going to be experiencing, actually it probably happened yesterday, but it's supposed to peter off today, but they had winds up to 180 kilometers an hour on the west coast of the island of Newfoundland, which is on our east coast there, Engine. Well above the threshold for what they would consider hurricane strength winds. So that was very interesting and very timely, I guess. So there's a little link to the article there. And then we also had 153 cases of measles in one little area of New York, just north of New York City, in what they call, I think it was Rockland County. And I guess it's all isolated one little community, so it's a pretty big deal, I guess.
That's a lot of people in close proximity. That's we joke about the doomsday preppers being ready for a pandemic, but honestly, like when you go back to when you press the reset button and you get rid of technology, the biggest threat to lives going back in the 1800s and before that was hygiene more than anything. if you get sick and there's no way to stop the spread, I mean, the bubonic plague wiped out like 2/3 of Europe back in the day. So maybe they're not as crazy as we thought. What's the old saying? You're only paranoid till you're right.
And just because you're paranoid, it doesn't mean they're not out to get you.
Exactly.
So, Anne, is there anything you want to talk about for news at all?
Huh?
Is there anything you want to talk about at all for news?
Well, if everything happens to go black on my end, it's because we're in the middle of a severe thunderstorm. So I apologize for that.
Well, that's also timely. That's pretty good, right?
Yeah. And
This was not planned.
Yeah. So I guess we should move on to what we've done lately for preps. So I guess it's Alan first.
Sure. I've been working on renos and still on a pretty serious training evolution this week. My end goal with these renos is to have more space to put away food, water, and supplies. So I'm getting close. Also made contact with the local ham radio club this week, so I'm picking up my book to get my license shortly. I did have something else in there, but I stopped mid-sentence and honestly can't remember what it was.
As for me, I'm on the road right now. But I did manage to inventory and reorganize some basic supplies at the secure alternate location and broadcasting farm. And then I went on the University of YouTube, since I'm sitting in hotel rooms right now, and learned some basic stick welding techniques, because the one of my mentors back on the island is going to be teaching me some basic welding skills here, hopefully next week. And I've also been kind of watching some YouTube videos on ham radio courses. Basically, there's a lot of online courses available on there that kind of run you through the whole basic course, which is nice. And I took some time to back up some analog pictures I had from the old days and tried to put them into digital format so I could save them on my portable Never Coming Home drive.
Cool.
Yeah. So for yourself, Ange?
A lot of the same things you guys do. Like, it's weird. So we recently got a shed to store all our stuff for like future hurricanes, because Katrina was a lesson and a half. I recently bought everyone like portable chargers for their phones, that where they don't need to plug it in. That you just keep the portable chargers full, and you plug your phone into it, or like my mom likes to read off her Kindle, or keep her Kindle charged off through that. And we're trying to back away from batteries a lot. So, but it's mostly having space to put all our stuff for future hurricanes, and because we don't know when to buy things until the news tells us to.
Yeah, that's true. It's never hurts to have a backup power supply for sure.
Yeah, it's mostly space and generators and stuff. But other than that, we've been kind of slacking, honestly.
But I guess you were saying hurricane season's coming up, though, right?
In a couple of months, yeah.
Okay.
Like June.
Cool. Well, time to move on to the main topic, I guess. So it's main topic of the show today is severe weather. I guess this will be part one of many. I'm sure we'll talk about other various weather aspects over the time. But today we're focusing on hurricanes and so how it can affect somebody with a mindset for preparedness. So while this may not affect most of us in Canada, similar storms happen on the east and west coastlines. And keep in mind, too, if you travel to foreign countries, you may find yourself stuck in one. Whether they call them a typhoon or a hurricane, it's just the same, just different parts of the world. They're defined as having heavy rain and winds exceeding at least 74 miles an hour or 119 kilometers an hour. So, of course, I just mentioned the Newfoundland weather there. That's 60 kilometers over the threshold. So, I mean, they're certainly getting some destructive winds there today. So, to talk about this tonight, we brought in some local authority on the subject. So
Authority, sure, okay.
Yeah, that's you.
Sure, we'll call me that.
So, tell us a little about yourself there, Ange.
Well, I'm currently in my early 30s. I'm 33, and I lived through about 6 hurricanes, maybe. I've been told 10, but there's probably 3 I don't remember. And 2 tornadoes, which is weird for us. And a lot of thunderstorms every April.
It's kind of a thing when everything starts to warm back up, right?
April showers, they say. Rain make flowers, so yeah.
Yeah, well, for myself, I've only been stuck in one in my life, and I was actually like a weird typhoon called Air back in 2004. I was in Taiwan for a multi-day job interview, and in the middle of the interview, they basically got up and said, "Well, we're gonna go sit in our homes for the typhoon. Have a good day. See you in a few days. Come back when the storm's over." And I was kind of left to myself in the hotel room. So
that sounds about right.
Yeah, I learned a lot about that. Just making sure I have lots of water handy and everything else. It was a bit of a learning curve for sure.
Where I live is kind of on the lee side of the Great Lakes, and seen a lot of aftermath. We get a lot of thunderstorms around here. I've never been in the direct path of a tornado, but I've been close to them. I've seen a lot of aftermath of them. There was one in Goderich here going back almost 10 years, which is Goderich is a little port town right on the west side, on the west shore of Lake Huron. They got hit. They had about 3 minutes warning that it was coming, and it just flattened the town. I don't recall if there were any deaths. I don't think there were. I think there's very minimal personnel damage, but there were hundreds of homes and century-plus old buildings destroyed that took years to recover from. I've part of my job in first response has been to be part of the cleanup afterwards. So I've seen the effects of major weather. I've been fortunate enough to never be stuck in anything more than a major thunderstorm.
Yeah. So isn't Goderich home to a nuclear plant too?
It's just there, about an 45 minutes north of there is Bruce Nuclear Power. It's in a little town called Kincardine. But yeah, that's absolutely a concern because pretty much everything in Ontario, like in this part of Ontario, is downwind of that, and downstream.
Good planning.
Yeah.
Excellent. So, no, we tried to come up with some good questions for Ange as best we could, but we're kind of curious because we don't get stuck in these ourselves very often. But I guess for the average person that travels or whatever have you, just gonna start throwing some questions at you here. So, generally, if you're in a hurricane, what percentage of the population tends to stay versus just bugs out of town?
It depends on where you live and the category of storm. Like where my parents live, which is St. Bernard Parish. You can find it on the map. It's like one of the biggest parishes below Lake Pontchartrain. From St. Bernard Parish on back toward the Gulf, about 25%, because they're mostly just bits and pieces of land. They're like near the eroded part of the state.
Okay.
But going toward the city of New Orleans, less than 25%. It depends if it's a mandatory evacuation or not, really.
Interesting. So if you are planning to bug out, do you have a plan for a regular bug out location? Like, do you have a destination? Oh, hey, here's this year's hurricane coming. We're going to go to this point. Is that part of your plan?
With our recent plan since Katrina, it's either the next parish over, depending where the eye hits, because that's where it is. And I taught my parents about longitude and latitude recently.
Okay.
Because they're in their 60s, so I guess they kind of missed that in school. And New Orleans is 30 degrees north, 90 degrees east, I think it is. So I'm like, if the eye is going there, guys, you need to leave. And if the next parish over doesn't help, then it's the next state over, like Texas, or depending on which way the hurricane is leaning. If it's leaning towards the west, then we'll go to Mississippi. If it's leaning toward the east, then we'll go to Texas.
Okay. And so you just basically see where the projected path is, and that's kind of where you plan to go, the opposite direction. Yeah. So actually,
go ahead.
Oh, so for people that aren't familiar, so can you describe the eye of the hurricane?
In general or Katrina?
Well, no, in general, because I guess it calms right down and then kind of switches direction or something, doesn't it?
No, so say the hurricane is going like northwest, the eye takes the hurricane in that direction, and it's just pretty much the empty, calm part of the storm. So if it's coming towards New Orleans, you will get the front end that we call it of the hurricane, and then the eye, then it's calm for like maybe an hour, and then you get the back end of the hurricane.
And the winds are kind of the opposite direction then, aren't they? Like they kind of like start blowing the other way? Or is that...
Not really.
Oh, okay.
Not really.
I thought there was kind of like a front to back thing, like it was a little bit low pressure thing, but
because it's only spinning in one direction, so if it's moving northwest, it'll move northwest, and the winds will generally blow in that direction.
Oh, okay, cool. So I got a question for you. So law enforcement. So if the police are sitting there worried about people coming and going during the storm, do they kind of try to provide a bigger or smaller presence during the storm? Like, they expect it to stay and do patrols, or do they just like leave town as best they can if it's a big one?
If it's a big one, they leave. they
Good to know.
they don't have time for that, so they leave.
Oh, except for
But-
the CNN reporters, they still stay though, right? They try and get right in the middle of the storm.
Yeah, that's them being nosy. They can stay outside in that if they want, but if it's like a little one, like the last one we had, yeah, they'll like usually set a curfew, and if you're out, you're going to jail.
Oh, that's good to know. Actually, so they introduce a curfew and they just assume that you're up to no good if you're not in the house.
Mostly, well, they say for safety reasons, and then it kind of depends on which parish you're in. Like in St. Bernard Parish, half of the law enforcement went to high school with me, so it's like, Angela, go home. You need to go home. But if you're in like New Orleans, where it's a bigger city, and it's like, yeah, you're going to jail for the night until the storm's over.
Okay, well, fair enough.
I guess it's cheap. It's cheaper to lock you up than it is to come rescue you afterwards, right?
Yeah, exactly. That's like exactly the saying that they say. They'll make us come save you.
It's true,
So
I guess.
is it, knowing that hurricanes are coming, and I mean, if you live in New Orleans, I'm sure it's just an expected reality.
Mhm.
Why is there always such a rush to grab plywood at Home Depot at the last second? Like, why do people not keep a stock on hand?
We don't know exactly where it's gonna land because Katrina wasn't supposed to hit New Orleans. It was supposed to go towards like Florida. And then so everybody was like, cool, we get to relax. No problem. I got my little case of water. I'm good. Watch it on TV. And then within a matter of hours it switched direction. And it's like, okay, you got like 2 days to get your stuff.
Right.
And
I guess-
people, I think, rather not spend the money if they don't have to.
Well, I guess too, if it's in a moist climate too, I guess the wood doesn't last more than a year or two before it's rotted away anyways, I guess, right?
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I guess that makes sense.
Learned the hard way with a wooden fence. It lasted like I think 4 years, and then it looked like it was like 3,000 years old.
It's the tropical humidity, right? It's just it's gonna melt everything. So I kind of
We treated it with so it would last a little longer, and it did. But if you ever come down here and look at the wooden fences, they're not as old as you think. They're probably like 4 or 5 years old, but they look like they've been here since the 90s or something.
cool.
That's I guess that's another thing to take into consideration when you're making your plans, right? Is that what you have is subject to the weather.
Yeah.
So on that note, like when you're stocking up, what having been through hurricanes, what do you find you use most? What supplies do you need more of?
I think it depends on your family. Like my family, we're water drinkers, so that's more important. And like grazers, we don't eat really big food. So if we have like bags of chips, like 2 bags of chips each, we're fine for the whole storm. Or like for Katrina, I remember my mom, we didn't want to like lose a lot of stuff, so she made sandwiches like for the largest picnic ever. Like she used all the bread, all of our meat and stuff, and made like 50 sandwiches. And then her whole family invited us to come because we weren't going to leave for the storm. We were going to stay. And they didn't bring anything. And luckily she made all those sandwiches and brought all the perishable foods because like in the middle of traffic, we all like had a picnic and ate everything.
So I guess that's another point. I remember when like watching the news surrounding Katrina that their biggest challenge was mandatory evacuation, and then nobody could get anywhere because the interstates were all clogged up. Is it a normal thing to be just kind of stuck in the middle of nowhere and not being able to move?
A lot of lessons were learned since then. Like when that happened, like at the last minute, they decided to open both sides of the interstate. So if you're coming in, you can still take the opposite direction. They just wanted everyone out. And if you couldn't get out, good luck.
Yeah, it didn't go so well, eh?
No.
Yeah, it's kind of tough, especially like, yeah, I saw the damage after. I think it was in New Orleans about 3 years afterwards, and it was still, there's so much damage still that, you know,
Damage.
oh yeah, it's crazy. But so actually, just out of curiosity, and it's probably normal for you, but for us, it might seem as extra reinforcements and stuff. But what kind of stuff do you use to like reinforce your home for storms? Like, do you guys have like shutters you usually just throw over? Like, do you have water pumps in the? I don't even know. Do you have basements or like extra tarps or anything else?
Definitely extra tarps for like if your roof is really old. Like right about now, the news, our local news is starting to tell you what to get depending on the situations. So like definitely load up on tarps. In about a couple of weeks, I think they're gonna tell everyone to start getting wood if you don't have like closable shutters,
Mm-hmm.
and they're gonna start telling you to get batteries and stuff. It's like a yearly thing, like football season. Like hurricane season coming. So get ready to get your stuff if you're gonna stay, and then when the actual storm hits, whatever extra you need, then that's pretty much on your family.
Okay, and you said you have no basements there, right?
Oh, there's no way we can have basements.
Yeah, just water level or water tables too high and all that stuff.
We were 18 feet below sea level.
Oh wow.
Like I was telling Alan earlier, like for Katrina, they were letting people back into the city 3 days after it was over just to check on your family to see if their graves were risen, I guess.
Oh wow.
Because that's a thing that happens. Like a lot of our graves in our cemeteries are above ground, and then there's some that are below. And if the water stays and seeps in, it'll raise the caskets out of the ground.
We get kind of a Canadian version of that, but it's usually based on frost or cold weather. But it's results the same. Yeah, it's just
Frosty is a thing. Yep.
But well, it's interesting.
Yeah, so there's no basement down here, and if you have one, that's a miracle. I've never seen a basement in my life, and I'm in my 30s.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
That's wow. That's again. It's just the minor differences. Like we're really not that far apart physically. Like we're less than than 1,000 miles, and
Yeah.
I don't think I've ever been in a house that didn't have a basement.
Yeah,
But
well, it's weird because like even where I am too is like people don't have basements either because it's the water table's too high because it's near the ocean, or it's like solid bedrock and it's just not. It's too expensive to dig a basement, so you just can't have it where we are. So, oh, I don't know what that was. Did you guys hear that?
That was me.
Yeah,
that was
I heard that. Oh.
Okay.
Sorry.
So after that hurricane hits, like how long does it take for hospitals and schools, all the infrastructure to return to normal? Like, there's obviously a recovery plan in place. What's the target time to get back to normal operations?
It depends on their strength. Like if it's a category 1, it's usually a day or two after. Like with Katrina, it was months, almost a year when schools opened back up. Like I was in college when it happened. I was in my first year of college, so I missed like a whole semester and a half. No, a whole year and a half, because all the school that I went to was it had water damage, and my brother, he was in the 12th grade and almost got held back because we didn't think right away when we went to Memphis to put him in school, and then it's like, oh yeah, we could put him in school here. So we waited for him to finish out his senior year in high school to get out.
Oh wow, okay.
And then the first thing to come back the following year was Mardi Gras. No schools, no malls, Mardi Gras.
We don't have schools, we don't have malls, the hospital barely functions, but damn it, we're having a party.
We did that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I suppose the rumors are true then. There's always a party in New Orleans, right?
Yes. And God forbid our Saints win anything. They'll close school if the Saints win.
Sports town.
So they figure well, you're not coming to school anyway, so.
Well, at least they're realists about it, I guess.
Yeah.
So I guess as far as a personal threat to you, Red, in your location, like what's the biggest threat that you would consider, like flooding, power outages, or whatever have you? Like, what's your main concern, I guess?
in my general area, mostly flooding and power outages. Mostly power outages. If the wind blows too hard, the power will go out. So.
Yeah, I guess. Well, they probably don't bury the power lines either if it's the water table's that high, right?
No, they're definitely above ground and little stick men.
Yeah. Oh, that's not good.
I don't know what to say. And it also depends, like, when you buy home insurance, and depending on where your home is, like, the house around the corner could have flood insurance where the house behind that one wouldn't, because of just how the city is sinking. Like, some areas
Weird.
are
Okay.
sinking faster. Yeah. So they'll make you get flood insurance, or you can't buy the house.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Like with our house, we weren't in a flood zone, so we didn't have to. And then Katrina hit, and it was like, you know what? Give us that flood insurance.
On second
Well,
thought.
you were saying that was like your house was under 22 feet of water. You were saying when that happened,
Yeah.
22 feet of water.
It was above, like, there were
I,
grass
I,
stains.
I can't even imagine. Grass stains on there.
stains.
I can't even imagine.
I'm laughing because it's like unbelievable, but it's like, oh, that makes sense. The city's underwater practically. That makes sense.
Jeez. Yeah.
So with power being an issue, are like generators are a pretty normal occurrence, I would imagine, right?
There are
Can you
now,
leave them around?
like now, newer houses are being built with generators, and the way that they have them set up is like you have like where your attic is, and then next to the attic is your generator, the little thing that makes the air conditioning work.
Mm-hmm.
So in case it floods, none of that'll get wet.
Oh, that makes good sense. Put it up high.
Yeah, our house was built in the 70s, so our generators even on the ground. But it's like I drive past all that, like, to work, like where the Ninth Ward was completely underwater. All those new houses have that. I'm like, that is not a bad idea. We need to do that.
Yeah. Is that something that's being retrofitted into like the historical homes? You were telling me that like the French Quarter is, almost, more than 100 years old now, getting close to 150 years. Is that something they're retrofitting on the back of the house? I know when they started updating fire codes in New York City, they started putting fire escapes on all the buildings. Is that something that's happening there now?
Yeah, but that's the first thing the city will protect is their French Quarter and their Garden District.
They're worried about tourists, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah, mostly. And with permission from the city, like, you need a lot of permission from the city to do anything to the outside of the house. They're, I think recently, within the past 4 years, they're starting to update everything hurricane ready.
Okay.
So, we're getting it.
Cool. Actually,
it's not to be fast.
So I'm kind of curious now too, as well as so like during the storm when everybody's kind of hunkering down and maybe the police might have left town. Do you find that people take advantage of it and the crime rate increases or maybe even decreases during a storm, or do you find anything changes at all?
It decreases a lot because I don't want to say people have PTSD from Katrina, but a lot of people learn lessons. So when a storm is coming, depending on the category, nobody will be out on the streets.
Okay, that's good to know. It's just kind of like the opposite of what we all think, right?
Yeah, nobody's looting. Like, the looting that was reported for Katrina was mostly people getting food and water.
Yeah.
Because you couldn't steal electronics, it wouldn't work.
So actually on that note then, so I guess after Katrina and stuff, they had a bunch of vacated houses and stuff. Did people kind of go rooting through those afterwards and try and see what they could take from it, or just leave them alone and kind of never come back?
It was mostly copper wiring that I heard was stolen. So, because people back here they have a lot of ingenuity. So if they can, like, salvage anything and make it work in their house, they'll take it. But as far as, like, people's, like, like entertainment stuff, like TVs and sofas and all that wasn't taken. A lot of it was also mostly to see if there were any bodies inside the house.
Yeah, I guess that's a concern too, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, makes sense to at least do the check.
It'll get hot and bodies will literally start boiling, and that's not a great smell.
Well,
it's
and a health
it's really not.
and a health
I
condition
smelled
too, right?
I've smelled it.
Yeah, legitimate health concern for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or if there's alligators trapped.
Once again, things that I don't have to.
I was gonna say alligators trapped in the house.
Yeah, like the the neighborhood I grew up in, New Orleans East. I forget which storm it was. I want to say it was Hurricane George. There were alligators coming out of the sewers, and they were just walking down the street. It was like a regular suburb, and you would look out your window, and there's like a little family of alligators.
And here I thought I had to worry about cougars, but at least they're cute and cuddly. That's like one step up for sure.
Just don't go outside. Just don't go outside.
just don't go outside. That's a really good reason to be well prepared. Is alligators walking down the street, cranky alligators because they've been ejected from their homes.
Yeah.
Once again, this is why I live where the air hurts my face, is so that I don't have to deal with alligators coming out of the sewers
and snakes.
Oh yeah, see, there's my weak point right there.
But we have those anyway. Like we live near a canal, so they're just, hey, you're gardening today? That's nice. What you planting?
Yeah, no, not interested. So, tell me, like what would you do? What would you recommend for preparing your home against high winds? Like high winds, whether it's a hurricane, whether it's a tornado coming. You've been through this. What kind of damage do you see? What do you do to prepare for that, to prevent it?
Definitely make sure your roof is up to date. There was a lot of holes in roofs and shingles missing. Make sure that your house, the foundation that your house is on, is intact, because there were a lot of houses that were blocks and maybe even a few like a half a mile away from where they were supposed to be.
Wow.
Yeah.
So they just got picked up and moved.
Just like the water just carried the house, and when all the water went down, wherever the house was, that's where it landed. So make sure all that is straight.
So Katrina did not clean up her room after she left. That's
Oh no, she danced in her room, destroyed it, kicked stuff around, and was like, I'm done.
Oh jeez.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
So
it's funny. It's funny now.
Wow.
Well, we don't even hear about stuff like that up here, right? We did, we just heard the storm was bad, a lot of damage, but you can't even fathom stuff like that. I guess from our perspective, it's just so foreign. It's like it's hard to imagine, destruction that bad for sure, right?
I usually tell people, think of having a toy house and shaking it, and then a kid throwing it. That's pretty much what New Orleans looked like.
Well, I guess that's
Or like when you see pictures of nuclear fallouts, where all the houses are destroyed, and where the wind damage from the bombs were, that's a little more accurate.
That's interesting. Right now they're calling that storm on the Newfoundland a barn wrecker storm, and I'm like, well, that would make sense, I guess.
Yeah. That sure would.
Well, that's a lot of information there, Ange. I really appreciate that. So, any other things you want to talk about before we move on to the podcast challenge at all?
If anybody from New Orleans is listening, please pay attention to the news. Make sure check on your grandparents, because there was they know about the incident with the old folks home. So if you have old people in the old folks home, please check on them.
Yeah, season's coming.
I guess
right?
that applies to all severe weather too, right? Whether it's a tornado and a blizzard, or whether it's a heat wave or a hurricane coming in off the coast. Just make sure you have a plan to check on the people and make sure that you know where they are and that they're well taken care of. That's really sound advice. We talked about that with our mutual assistance groups in the last episode, right? Like, if your people get stuck, how are you gonna get them out? Make that part of your plan.
And don't forget about them.
No, that's right.
Yeah.
Take care of your personal safety first, then with safety of immediate family, right? So.
My dad went and got his parents when when Katrina hit. He was like, "You guys come," and we left hours before Katrina hit. So they were like,
good
"Okay."
sense.
We didn't think it was going to hit us. That's why we didn't leave. And when one of my older cousins was like, "Come on, we're leaving," my dad called his side, and my mom called her side, and we all just like caravan out of there. And then my grandparents were like, "Oh, we're going to Mississippi. See you."
See you. We're out of here.
Yeah, we got a better plan. You go. They had their plan was way better.
Well, Memphis is a long ways to go for an evacuation too.
Well, all the hotels by the time we left in Texas, all the nearer ones were sold out, and so were the ones in Mississippi. And one of my cousins was like, "Well, I hear Memphis is good this time of year."
Well, so it's, as long as you got the gas and the money to get there, it's perfect, right? So.
Oh yeah, everybody emptied out their bank accounts and kind of my family's really neat. They like pulled everything together, and we all like, "Here, I have this. Put this toward all this. Tell them we're coming."
Well, that's right good, especially when you guys decide to caravan out. That's a mini mag right there, right?
Oh yeah,
absolutely.
And I have a large family. It was at least 200 people.
Oh wow!
Wow.
And that was just one side of my family. That was my mom's side. Yeah.
That's not a mini mag. That's just that's a success. That's a successful one.
That is a mega mag.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
It was fun. It was like a mini family reunion.
Good deal. Well, I guess
a mini family reunion.
Yeah.
Yes, mini. Yes, mini. It was mini. It wasn't everyone.
Wow.
Yeah.
So, well, I guess that's awesome. So, I guess we should move on to the podcast challenge. Just for the podcast challenge today, it's I guess subject appropriate as well. So, try and do one thing in your home this time to guard against high winds and heavy rain, which can certainly happen anywhere in Canada. So, secure your outbuildings with anchors in the ground. Maybe use some hurricane straps, which is like a metal strap that goes between your headers and your overhead rafters, just to secure those down for high winds. Check your shingles, and maybe just clean your gutters to improve your drainage. And if you can get all that done, that's a pretty good podcast challenge completed.
Definitely.
Your garage door is a big source of wind. If your garage door fails, then wind is going to get in and take your roof off. So if you have a garage attached to your house, then make sure that's properly secured.
Yeah, it'd become a big parachute then, right? So to kind of get an upward force on the roof.
Exactly.
That has happened.
Huh.
It sure has. A friend of mine built a house in Florida, and he said that was a part of the garage door had to be solid and installed in a certain way, and it had to be a certain weight and a certain size, and planned specifically for hurricanes. So upcoming events we'll so let us know about the podcast challenge. If you've done anything, let us know what's going on there. I'll talk about some upcoming events. In Eric's absence, I will mention the 2019 annual Preppers Meet in Desboro, Ontario. That's coming up July 11th to 14th. Link in the show notes at annualpreppersmeet.com. Cool place to go see some awesome people. I think Eric will be there. I'm pretty sure that's what he said. I'm going to try and make it out. So let us know if you're going, and perhaps we can sit around the fire and have a brew and talk about the good old days.
Sounds good. We also will have the first annual Western Canada Hot Springs Meet, May 25th, 26th. It's the weekend after the May long weekend at Slowcut Hot Springs. I put the link in the show notes to figure out how to get there for some campcraft discussion and a meetup for like-minded people. Also on July 6th, just before the Preppers Meet, there's a podcaster charity shoot in Drumheller, Alberta. More details are going to come on that one. Everybody's welcome. Come on over and meet one of your favorite hosts from either Slamfire Radio, Canadian Patriot Podcast, meet some CCFR field officers. That's kind of like our NRA up north here, Ange. And then one or two people from our own show, maybe. I guess that'd probably be me, and hopefully I'll make it to the Preppers Meet too. Give a shout out here. If you were listening in, was that 2 episodes ago for when we talked about the Survive the Storm course with Chris?
he is putting that on sale now for a few days for just $39. Check out that again. That's ecourseadventures.com/STS. Survive the Storm, or go back and check out his blog for sure, which is full of useful information. That offers up until April 7th. So if you're listening to this live or you're listening to this next couple of days, keep that going. And yeah, definitely give Chris a shout out. Let him know that we sent you, and that'll be hopefully you'll get some great information out of that.
Cool. I got a shout out for the traveling prepper. We had a little meetup there a little while ago, and he allowed me a rare look at his setup. It's not often something he rewards to too many people, so I really appreciate that. It was fun to have a good meetup and exchange of ideas. And any shout outs for you?
Mostly to my local news, Channel 6 and Channel 4. They're really on top of all the weather and all the sports games. So thank you guys.
Cool. So I guess time for some email and iTunes reviews. So for me, I got a YouTube comment from Brad regarding our Mag episode. It just reads, "Hi guys, great podcast. Community makes a lot of sense when it comes to mags. Helps to ensure buy-in by the group and encourages reasonable labor breakdown and responsibility. I'm really glad to hear this being discussed. Exactly why I like listening to fellow Canadians on this topic."
All right. We also got an email from Brad. I don't know if it's the same Brad or not, but it reads, "Hi guys, been a while since I wrote from you from the first few podcasts. I've made great strides in conversations with my family regarding prepping. It was easier than I thought and accidental. Accidental prepping is probably the best kind of prepping. Picked up one of the books my 12-year-old is reading for school. Rule of Three by Eric Walters, who's a Canadian author. Turns out all my boys read it. Anyhow, read the trilogy and now reading the third book of the 1 Second After trilogy. Very cool. That's pretty awesome. Helped me think in pragmatic terms about what an extended power outage would look like. And my wife is even making prepping suggestions." Well, I mean, that ties back into our episode, right? If you can't get the family on board, none of that matters. So really glad to hear, Brad, that you've got that done. Brad goes on. He says, "Other preparations I have made. Got my PAL, no gun yet, but target shooting. Great first step. Bought some prep items, flint lighters, MSR water purification, medical kit items, etc. Had a Generac installed on the hydro pole to run a generator to the panel. Lots of wood cut and split for wood burning insert. Bought a small generator to run the fridge and the freezer, keeping a large propane tank filled with higher frequency, as we don't have a natural gas hookup out here in the rural area. So your advice continues to be really pragmatic and realistic, especially like the Mag episode's message. That was also the conclusion that hit me while I was reading the books. Being Rambo in the woods alone isn't going to win the day. So podcast suggestion, solar power and how it fits into prepping. Specifically, my water systems are hardwired to the electrical panel. Need a 240 generator to plug into the Generac. Whether to buy a $5,000 gas generator, which has a limited fuel capacity, or better off hooking up to an off-grid battery solar system that would run the water. Among others, looking at the Tesla Powerall. But now that I listened to the EMP episode, my tinfoil hat is interfering with the decision. Thanks, Brad. Wow, Brad, that's a lot of information in a very concise email, and I appreciate that. Looks like you're making great strides, and keep up the great work. Looks like you've got it all going in the right direction. We actually already have a solar episode queued up coming up in a little bit, so stay tuned. Not sure exactly when that's coming up, but it's on the list. Water system being hardwired into the electrical panel. That is certainly a big decision as to whether to put it on its own generator, run it on something else. But sounds like you've got a lot of good options. Stay tuned for the solar episode. Maybe that'll help you make your decision.
And as far as the Powerwall, I mean, no sense living a life in fear. If you want to get one for your house, maybe it can save you some money in the short term. Why not get it? And it might help you in everything but an EMP scenario, right? Absolutely.
I mean, an EMP is like one teeny tiny little percentage of a fraction of a possibility of an occurrence. So I would say it's probably not a bad investment. And if an EMP happens, then have have another plan for that. But I think overall, it's a really good idea if it's part of your plan.
And if you have an electric car, it works too. So
there you go. And I drive an electric car. It's pretty cool.
There you go. But aren't those power walls, aren't they just big batteries, just like a big battery pack on the wall, or what are they have something special on them, like a inverter or something?
Well, it's got an inverter and a filter so that you get clean and efficient power at a usable wattage and voltage, which is pretty cool. And it becomes part of the house instead of something that takes up space in the house.
Cool. Well, I guess that's about it for tonight then. I'm going to bring episode 19 of the Canadian Prepper Podcast to an end. You can find the podcast on iTunes, Podbean, Spotify, or your favorite podcast app. Please help us out. Take a few minutes to submit a review. It helps other people find us. You can also find us at prepperpodcast.ca.
We record these shows live on YouTube chats. If you want an early peek at the show, please subscribe to the YouTube channel, The Island Retreat. Click the notification tab that gives you an alert when we are going live. You can contact me directly on Instagram at PPSWO. Ange, how can we reach you if we want to?
I have an Instagram, but it's mostly for my yoga. I teach yoga and I love tennis shoes. But if you want to reach me on Instagram, it's at supa_dope_fly_yogini. It's hard.
I think that's the show notes right now. Yogini, you said?
Yeah.
All right, gotcha.
Hey, you know, it's a better sell to guys. Instead of calling it yoga, call it tactical man stretching. It actually works way better.
Absolutely.
Guys are weird when it comes to yoga, and do yoga, guys. It's good for you.
Actually, I will fully admit it. I tried it, and it's very relaxing. My problem is I go into Shavasana or something like that, and I end up falling asleep.
That's good.
That's not bad. That's not a bad thing.
So I'm like, well, this is like sleepy time yoga now, because now I just want to go there and fall asleep.
Yoga saves my hips.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Actually, it's good for my back too. I will admit that. So my wife just has to force me to go more often. So
at least 3 times a week.
Yeah. All right. So as far as myself, if you want to reach Ian directly, you can email me at theislandretreat@gmail.com. You can also find me giving my 2 cents worth on Canadian Patriot Podcast, also available on iTunes and YouTube. There you'll find us discussing the merits of a freer society, exposing more government waste, and squirreling off on the tactically driven conversation.
In Eric's absence, I will remind everyone to check out rapidsurvival.com. That is Eric's small survival preparedness company. You can find Eric there in the live chat while buying your prepper gear. You can also get a hold of Eric and the rest of us at feedback@prepperpodcast.ca. That's .ca, not .com. While buying your prepper gear at Rapid Survival.
Well, thanks for joining us, and tune in for the next episode. We're going to discuss the role of gardening in preparedness, unless you guys don't like talking about having renewable food sources.
So until next time, be prepared, stay safe, and
keep learning.